Okay, so welcome to Evidence-Based Practices Working Together, Motivational Interviewing and High Fidelity Wraparound. A little bit about ourselves, just so you know who we are. This is the obligatory Magellan slide about the company. There you go. So Sharon and I work together, and I'll let Sharon, you go first to introduce yourself.
Thank you. So my name is Sharon Weber, and I am the lead trainer for High Fidelity Wraparound in Wyoming. I've been working in this field just a couple years, only just a few. I only have just a little bit of gray hair. I love wraparound. I love what I'm doing, and I'm excited to share with you where we're at and where we're headed.
And my name is Barbara Dunn, and I'm the Director of Innovation and Outcomes for Magellan, and I work with across our states. And so starting with a wraparound in Wyoming and helping with some of the implementation there. So if you could put in the chat if you are working in wraparound, or if you are a trainer for, you've been trained in motivational interviewing, if you could put that in the chat just so we get a sense of who you are, where you're from, and if you know nothing about either one, that's fine too. And hopefully we'll be able to get you some of those resources to get to know it more. So go ahead and put in the chat. Oh, good, a trainer for MI. Awesome. Woohoo! Yay. Okay. And trained in MI. Excellent. Okay. Nice. So keep on coming in, as we're just going to start talking and just keep on putting stuff in. Thank you. So today we're going to explore how using MIWRAP, which is motivational interviewing and high fidelity wraparound in a model together, demonstrated some early successes and some high potential for improving wraparound outcomes. We implemented an early version of MIWRAP to improve fidelity in specific areas. So we're going to look at some of those results. And then last part is the long-term outcomes that we're really excited about for engagement, implementation, graduation success in wraparound. So we're going to be looking at that from a couple of angles. And then Sharon will be talking about it from a coach trainer perspective. So our learning objectives. So of course, and I have my notes here too. So we really want to identify our purpose and process for integrating motivational interviewing and high fidelity wraparound with coaching. We want to look at some of the tools at our disposal and hopefully at your disposal too. That's one of the key aspects of our work in putting high fidelity wraparound and motivational interviewing together, is using the tools at our disposal. We didn't have money for a university to help us out. So hopefully this will also translate to work that you do and what's available. I hope to give Sharon sufficient time for you to hear the effect of MI coaching on the wraparound process, because there's MI coaching and wraparound coaching. And of course, I want you to be able to evaluate the study. And I do want to get some of your feedback in evaluating the study itself, as well as looking at the results. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Sharon to talk about how we got to the MIWRAP study.
So we're going to start with just giving you a little bit of a history of where we're at with wraparound in Wyoming. I do use two screens, so if you see me going back and forth, I'm not being spastic. I have two screens I'm looking at. Officially, we started wraparound with in 2009 with a system of care grant. Unofficially, we started a whole lot sooner when Carl Dennis from Kaleidoscope came to Wyoming and started talking about this idea he had and what they were doing in Chicago. And that started a process in Wyoming. And those conversations, I think, really helped us to get to a spot where we could really utilize some of these federal grants, like the System of Care grant, the CHIPRA grant. We utilized those grants to begin the process of a more formalized wraparound. And we ended up going with a Vroom-Vandenberg model, which has worked really well for us. We then moved into a spot where we did a demonstration with our southeast corner of Wyoming with 7 counties. From there, the state really liked the outcomes they were seeing. And so they wrote 2 Medicaid for 2 waivers. And so we're currently doing wraparound through 2 Medicaid waivers. And that has been really fabulous. And we've been doing that for 5.5 years now. Go, Barbara.
You didn't want to mention about the motivational interviewing beta group?
Oh, you probably should, huh? This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So as a part of this, and as a part of our wraparound, we want to keep improving, really dedicated toward that. What do we keep doing to keep making this better for families so that they get to where they want to be? And so we started with a beta group on how do we actually integrate MI into wraparound. And then we started moving from there. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because we found that some of our families come into wraparound, they are ready. They're ready, they're determined, they're on fire, they're doing it. Other families come into wraparound and they're still reluctant. They've got ambivalence they talk about in MI. Do I want to do this? Do I not want to do this? We really want to help families get to a spot where they have at least 6 months of wraparound, because what we found is that at 6 months, that's when we start to see a lot better outcomes. And so MI was a tool that we felt like could really be used for that. We are passionate in our state about doing what we can to support families and helping them be the best selves that they want to be. And so that's why we're doing it. This is a little bit about the history of how we did our integration. There are pieces that we did well, there's pieces that didn't work as well, but we really started with the training. So Van Vandenberg really came on board with that whole idea also. How do we take MI and integrate it into wraparound? And I had the good fortune to be one of their first classes where we started talking about that. We had done some motivational interviewing in our state, some of that training. And when I watched and looked at how we could do the integration, man, it was exciting. It was really, really exciting to think about how can we make this work together. And so just jumped on board. And we started, as I said, with that beta group where we took a number of our providers and some of our coaches, introduced that training where there was that integration of the 2 processes. And then went from there and did a 6-week training course for each one of our providers who was already certified in wraparound so that they could see how this integration was going to happen. At the same time, we integrated it into our basic foundations class and started teaching that to new providers as they came on. Also, part of this process, we rewrote all of our trainings to make sure that everything was integrated so that they get high fidelity wraparound and MI at the same time. What's different? Really, what is different? Because we started, one of the first things we did is we were doing wraparound. We were certifying people in wraparound. We were also teaching them MI skills, and those were separate classes. One of the things that we found is that they weren't doing both at the same time. It was the oddest thing, because as a coach, I would do observations, and as I was doing observations, I'd see them using wraparound and doing the structure of wraparound and using all those principles. And then I'd say, well, what about these skills we learned in the MI class? And they just didn't integrate the 2 things. So that really became a big piece of how do we take these 2 things and put them together so it's so seamless that they don't even think about it. And so that they can really use that mindset of MI, use the mindset of wraparound, integrate that into those principles, and not even realize what it is that they're doing because it feels so natural to them. Part of that also became that language, making sure that they utilize the language throughout their process. So those of you who've been in training for MI, there's language you're looking for. You're looking for open-ended questions. You're looking for reflections, you're looking for that change language. You're looking at how do you soften that sustain language. We integrated all of that language, those kinds of words, the way that you look and hear things, into what we do in Wraparound. So now they're not only taught how to do a child and family team meeting, but how in that child and family team meeting do you listen for that change language? And then how do you use your questions to really evoke more change language? And so it's really a process of putting everything together. Go, Barbara. This was from a quote that one of our providers had as she was taking the integration of MI into Wraparound, which we call MeWrap. I loved it. I thought it was a beautiful quote, so I wanted to share it with all of you. And it's really about listening, right? Anybody who's worked with families for a while, you know this on a real core belief system. It's about listening. How do we listen and really hear what it is that they're saying? And this is her quote she came up with as we started talking about the mindset of MeWrap. And flick.
Well, before I move on, I just wanted to sort of take a stop because you made good time going through everything. If there were questions that folks might have on motivational interviewing and high fidelity wraparound and how that matches, how do you integrate, anything along those lines, you can put it in the chat as well. Has anybody else tried to do this in our group here? Has anyone tried to integrate motivational interviewing into high fidelity wraparound? Yes, Allie, yes. Okay, how'd it go?
Good. Our agency has adopted motivational interviewing, and so we actually have coders within our agency, and we record often. And we're a newer wraparound program. We've only been around for about 5 or 6 years. And I mean, I'm one of the trainers for MI, so I love it. I think it works great. But I think that our staff really find that it honors the family's values, and it really honors what their top of the mountain is. You know, where do they want to go and how do we partner with them successfully? So I would say, you know, telehealth, telemedicine has presented its challenges with really using that. But it goes really well here. We really like it. So
good.
We would agree, Allie. One of the things that we've seen is that Wraparound really gave us a really good structure of how to do things. And MI really added some more skills that our providers really needed.
that is the perfect way of putting it. They just complement each other so well to me. So
Great. Thank you. Any other folks out there that are using motivational interviewing in high fidelity wraparound or in another program? Oh, Jamie has a question. Did you say it was a 6-week training?
The 6-week training is what I did for the people who are already certified in Wraparound in order to introduce them to this integration of MI into Wraparound. And it wasn't 8 hour, 5 days a week. It was really good question. It was once a week because these were people who were already working in the field. And it was a way to bring them up to speed, integration of MI.
And I think they also had homework, and their coaches were all trained in that beta group. All the coaches were trained in the beta group. So they also were doing their observations of the folks that were in the training. Yeah. Cool. Well, if you do have other questions that come up, just throw them in the chat. If we can answer them on the spot, we will. If not, we'll sort of pause and answer them like we did just now. So we're going to keep moving here onto the study itself. So, these are the questions, the crux of the questions. How does motivational interviewing training integrated with high fidelity wraparound training improve fidelity to high fidelity wraparound? Because we are a wraparound program. When it comes down to the end of the day, we need to show our fidelity through wraparound. But does it also improve our engagement? And as Sharon had mentioned, we were concerned about folks who they weren't engaging. So we were concerned about them. We wanted to make sure to engage as many folks as we could. So we looked at that as a quality measure, a process measure, and then our outcomes, and that's where the CANS comes in. So you have to have a logic model when you do a study. So this is our logic model. We had eligibility criteria. So we had 60 family care coordinators. Those are the wraparound facilitators. So the 60 family care coordinators were our target, and we were going to train them in motivational interviewing. And as Sharon had said, they were already trained in high fidelity wraparound. They had already been working in the field in high fidelity wraparound for a year with a coach, and they had some pretty good fidelity already. So that was the core group that we started with. And then we had to assign a cohort because Sharon is our trainer. And although the coaches were co-trainers in the sessions, so there's coaches assigned to FCCs, we could divide them up. So we wanted cohorts, so groups for training, and no more than 3 training groups in each session. So that would be 12 total sessions. So what we ended up with is 3 periods of time, and actually 13, because whenever you try to offer things to people, there's always a group that can't get there for those. So had to do an extra group. So these are the actual training sessions. So 6 of the 8 weeks, January, February, March, April, and then May, June. So within the 6 months, all of the FCCs were trained during that time. So we wanted to do a pre-post study. So before they took the training, what was the fidelity of all these individuals who, again, have been working in wraparound? And then after the training, what does their fidelity look like? So we thought 6 months pre and post, that should give us enough time. So as each group got trained, we did cohort 1 had their 6 months, cohort 2, their 6 months. And then we put all the gray pre-cohort fidelity measures together in that lump sum. And then our plan was to look at the post-cohort fidelity measures, 6 months, 6 months, 6 months. We did have a couple of things happen, specifically that we started with 58 FCCs, but not all of them continued. So I'll show you some of those numbers as we look in there. So what we ended up doing was we added more time to the post-cohort fidelity so that we could really maximize what was there. We really wanted to make sure we had as much data as possible, and this is the way that we did it. Sort of the end result is also we saw the lasting effects of the training. So we were able to see over, sort of this run out time, was the training really holding? Now I'm saying the training holding, but also during this time, the entire high fidelity wraparound curriculum has had motivational interviewing put into it so that it is one seamless curriculum. So we're actually ending up testing the entire curriculum, not just this initial training, but the entire curriculum as we're going forward. So this is where we ended up in terms of the numbers. We had 58 staff trained in motivational interviewing. Only 48 of them continued as FCC. A number of them decided to be family support partners instead. So peer support for families. And just a pause to say, this is Wyoming. And in Wyoming, as a frontier state, we've got some novel ways of working with wraparound. And one is that we have individuals who are both family care coordinators and family support partners, depending on who they're working with. They still have a max of, is it still 10 or is it 12? A max number, okay, that they can work with overall. But that's kind of a strength because of that, what a family support partner brings in is not lost on the family care coordinator because they may be the family support partner for others. So anyway, so 48 continued as FCC, and then there was a number who decided to just be FSPs. So of these, 22 of the FCC had a WFI-EZ, so a fidelity survey from a caregiver. So we use caregiver surveys pre-MI training. So, and the reason for that is partly because we do the WFI-EZ at the 6 month mark. We don't do it at discharge. We don't do it early. We do it at 6 months. And that's just one of those state nuances on the best timing. But because of that, not every FCC had a youth who ended up in that group, that 6-month group. So we only had 22 FCC with a WFI-EZ pre-MI, and we had 39 FCC with a WFI-EZ post. So we did have more, and that's partly because we extended out that time frame. When we look at the actual surveys, we had 31 surveys before the training and 88 surveys after. And then the percent of youth, we just wanted to see, did we lose a lot of youth beforehand? Did we have different rates of response? Not really. We had 57% of the youth with a caregiver response before in the pre-time, and then 63 after, not that much difference. So one of the things that, as I mentioned, we wanted to maximize the tools that were at our disposal. And this is one of the tools that's at our disposal in Wyoming, is we have a scorecard for providers. It's a little busy. And you see the providers are all on the left-hand side there, but each provider knows who they are, and they can look to see how they're doing on several measures. There's the face-to-face measures, there's average length of stay, so ones that we're not really looking at right now today. But the ones that we really wanted to look at were the quality measures for engagement and implementation. So engagement is defined as youth who are engaged in wraparound beyond 60 days. Because the plan of care, we have an initial plan of care, and then our second plan of care is at 60 days. So we found that that was really a mark when families were either deciding not to continue, or they would continue. And those that stayed at 60 days tended to stay longer, to past 180 days, but not every one of them. So 180 days is what the state had looked at for as an implementation measure, the full measure of wraparound. So we looked at those two measures for quality, and then our outcomes, our CANS measure and our graduation success from High Fidelity Wraparound. So at this very bottom here, you see there's a baseline that we were working off of, so for historical measures. And then this is from our June 2020. By June 2020, all of our FCCs have been trained in motivational interviewing. So not just the cohort, but also all the newbies that came in during that time. So as a result, this is our program result. So we're looking at our entire program and how motivational interviewing not only is the pre-post and the cohort, but are we able to move the needle on our program? So working with our providers, having them look at the material, we found to be really important, and we'll look at one measure each time in our learning collaboratives with the providers. But for engagement and implementation specifically, so 16% disengaged, and that was our baseline, and we were able to pretty much maintain that at 15%. We never wanted to go below 20%. Our target is 10%, which is why it's not at a green. But we have a high target, and we think that's a good target to have, an aspirational target. For implementation, almost the same, 62% continued past 180 days as our baseline, 61%. And then looking at the CANS, this is our quarter over quarter, and that's not outcomes. It's really about how kids are doing quarter over quarter. And we see that pretty steady, but we actually have seen that go up a little bit to 55% quarter over quarter. And so we really try to focus on making sure that kids are making progress, regularly. And then the last one, this outcomes, a successful graduation from High Fidelity Wraparound. And you can see it's still red. And there's a lot of red here because we really need to move this needle up. And these are youth who successfully graduate from wraparound as defined by the family. But the family saying we met our goals. So we really felt the need to focus on this one as well, because that is our ultimate goal. So we barely scooched that one up as a program, but we did, move it a little bit. This is kind of the better way of looking at it because this is the overall program. So you'll see that in this box are those 4 measures that I just talked about. It's a little hard to see, sorry about the eye test. This orange dotted here is our baseline. This is before any of the motivational interviewing training started. This blue dotted dashed line is after everyone has been trained. So this time period in between is that that implementation time where we're doing the training of the motivational interviewing, and there's that crossover, folks who haven't been trained to folks that are trained. So when we look at our pre-time for the program, we look at this is our pre-program time, and this is our post-program time. So as we're looking at that, you can see that our, this not engaged measure, we want to keep it under our baseline. So that was what was in the provider scorecard, that's 16%. So quarter over quarter, we've been able to actually keep it below that, and it's better than it was before. Even though it started on its trajectory up, we're bringing it back down. So that's looking good. Green star means that we are meeting our goal or under the baseline. And a star that is a light green means we are within 1% of our baseline. So you'll see in the implemented, this is our orange, we did improve on our implemented, so we raised our baseline to make it more competitive. But when you look at it, we actually are doing better, but we're still within 1% of that. We overall are doing better, but this last time we kind of scooched down a little bit. Our CANs, we've continued our quarter over quarter, we're fine there. And then our graduation success is the one that we were really most concerned about. And we're actually looking at this as we're moving the needle here. So this is where we were at baseline for graduation success. We were at 38%. We increased our baseline because we did better during that interim time while we were doing the training for motivational interviewing. That was our biggest intervention. And then since then, we've been able to maintain that success rate. So that's something that we're really seeing as a program change. When we want to look at the actual cohort, this slide has both the program and the cohort on it. So let me walk through this a little bit. The national mean for fidelity for high fidelity wraparound for caregivers is 72%. Our baseline, so that was 2017, 2018, was already above that. So we already saw that this was a high fidelity environment. So that was good. Our pre-MI cohort, so just that cohort, they were at 76.8% fidelity. So they were even higher. And then after their motivational interviewing, their fidelity was even higher at the 77.5%. So we see this change as very positive. We've asked for some statistical significance from the University of Washington. They haven't been able to give us anything. So I'm just going to put that out there. If you ask that question, we don't have an answer to that. The other part is the program itself. So this is the program over here. Again, this is the baseline that we started off with. As a program in 2019, we actually just barely a dip down, but as a program for fiscal year 2020, so these are all the folks that were in the cohort, plus all the new high fidelity wraparound family care coordinators. And so 76.2, which we found interesting, especially because what we've seen is new coordinators, their first year, their fidelity is not quite as high as their second year of fidelity. So, this was good to see that even the newbies coming in, they were really uptaking the motivational interviewing and doing well. We dug in. I'll go through this a little faster. So this is the total fidelity as we had already looked at. We also looked at the basics of wraparound. So, the basics of wraparound, each one of these is an aspect of wraparound, and we're looking for at least 90%. That's the University of Washington guidance, at least 90% in each one of these to be able to say this is high fidelity wraparound. So for each one of these, you can see we started below in 3 out of 4. Our cohort, our pre-MI cohort, started above on 3 and at with 1, but at the end, we ended up above for all 4. So these basics for fidelity, the first one is my family and I are part of a team, And this team includes more people than just my family and one professional. And just as a reminder, these are only caregiver responses. That's all that we look at for Fidelity in Wyoming. The second one is, together with my team, my family created a written plan that describes who will do what and how it will happen. The third one is, my team meets regularly, for example, every 30 to 45 days. And the last one was, our wraparound team's decisions are based on input from me and my family. And this one was 100% pre-MI. So we're like, oh, we're gonna be able to get to 100% again. No, we didn't quite get to 100% again, but I think that 97.75 is pretty respectable. We also wanted to look at, excuse me, key elements. And so this is where there's national norms, and you can see that we were above national norm for our baseline. We did have, for our cohort, our pre-MI cohort, is a little bit below our baseline. That was interesting. All of it is above the national mean, but was a little behind, a little below for our key element of teamwork. And we know that there's a reason for that. And again, in Wyoming as a frontier state, part of this is there a professional in your team? And there may not be a professional on the team as a frontier state. Also, when it comes to natural and community supports, if you have professionals, sometimes it's hard to get natural and community supports in a very rural area. So this has actually always been a hard one for Wyoming. And we're okay with not having a professional on a team. So, you know, there's also that aspect. But all the other ones, we can see that our pre-MI was at or above. And of course, outcomes were above as well. And then post-MI, we're above on the pre-MI cohort for 4 out of 5. So if you're familiar with wraparound and each of the different elements, so natural supports, needs, outcomes-based, and family and strength-driven, all very respectable. We're not sure why outcomes came down, but still didn't go below the baseline. So that's a little bit of a mystery there. And then this is what we really were hoping to look at, was the actual outcome. So if you remember in the logic, it was, you know, the fidelity, but then going out another 6 months to get our engagement and implementation numbers. So our pre and post, so again, these are, this is our cohort folks. So 85% engagement, so 15% disengagement for the pre-MI folks versus 85% post. So this is the same. We did not have a change there, but still it was, you know, 15% disengagement was, which is a little bit better than the baseline. For implementation for pre-MI, that group was 63%, post was 61%. So that actually went down. One of our questions was, well, are individuals getting through wraparound faster because of MI? We don't know. So looking at successful graduation, if you've gotten through 180 days, one thing we are seeing is the pre-MI group was 39%, but our post was 46%. So that was our biggest jump. So it's possible that not only is MI improving our graduation success rates for kids over 180 days, but also maybe under 180 days. And that's something that we have to look into. And then our CANS improvements also went up quarter over quarter, just a little bit of smudge up. Again, that's not exactly outcomes. These are the outcomes. So for, we do look at the CANS outcomes for all the kids that have been discharged. And so this is, we tried to put as much information into one slide. So the whisker chart is what works for us. And then there's, you know, the description on the left. So when you look at the CANS scores when kids are coming into wraparound, so we've got the quartiles, so you've got the range from the minimum to the max, and there's always going to be some outliers, and those outliers are really high severity outliers that we will pay extra attention to because we know that they are at a higher risk for out-of-home placement. And this is a program, since these are the 1915 waivers, the 1915C being preventing a psychiatric, inpatient psychiatric or residential psychiatric rehab. So Yeah. So we know that this is a very high severity population, and some kids do go into out-of-home placement, or after out-of-home placement, then they come to us and wrap around. So we do have that very high severity population as well. So when we look at the averages, so we look at this is our median, and this is our average score, our mean. So our mean goes down. Sorry, that's a little hard to see that X. Our mean goes down by, 11.4 global sum points. So that global sum, we use needs and strengths, and we do the strengths in the, we don't reverse the strengths, we just leave them as is. So, so that if it's a 2, it still means we would be working on that strength, a need for a needs and strengths. So we would add that in there. So 11.4 global sum points change. And then, you can just look at how everything comes down. And you could do statistical analysis on this stuff. So for a two-tailed t-test, it's so highly significant, and you get like 10 zeros after it. Because we know that even changing one item is significant for, clinically significant for a youth. So looking at treatment needs is probably the way that is more meaningful. So in the prior year, so we compared the prior year to the current year. So we looked at global needs and strengths. So we separated out all the domains for needs versus the one strengths domain. And what we had is youth coming in had on average 8.7 needs. And they left on average with 5 needs. I mean, there's still other things that they can do after wraparound, right? It just means that the family says, we can do this on our own. We can do this informally on our own. We don't need a formal process any longer. So we do know kids leave wraparound with needs. So that was 2.4 needs that were resolved. And then for strengths, kids were coming in with 6.2 needs on strengths or lack of strengths. I'm sorry, 6.2 strengths coming in. Sorry, that's the 0-1. Coming in with 6.2 strengths, and they were leaving with 7.8 strengths. So they're improving their strengths. So that's an increase of 1.3 strengths on average. Well, this past year with motivational interviewing, it's still the same for needs, still a reduction of 2.4 needs. And I know that these are not identical, but when you look at the needs here, 8.5 needs and 8.7 needs down to the 5 and the 4.8. So still a reduction of 2.4 needs. But the strengths, we went with lower strengths, 5.7, and ended up with higher strengths, 8.1. So 2.4 change in strengths, increase in strengths. So that's something that we're really noticing with the motivational interviewing, how that's improving the strengths here. So should I stop for a moment, Sharon, and just ask questions, or should I go ahead and
ask some questions, because you gave them
questions? Well, let me look. There's some things in here. Can I confirm, thank you, Jamie, can I confirm the 1915C is used to fund wraparound, or were you referencing something different? So yes, so this 1915C is funding a wraparound program. And we also have in Louisiana, we have 1915C funds being used. I hope I answered the question with that. Just looking to see if there's other questions.
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
Oh, okay, good, good. It's not necessarily easy because the way CMS has done like the fidelity measurement itself and the coaching, the training, none of that gets funded through the Medicaid funds.
Right.
It's only the services to the youth that get funded. So I mean, that's one of the CMS issues over the past couple of years.
Just to go in, we have about 15 minutes left.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thank you. Well, let me just go ahead and get some of your thoughts going while we look at the next steps. So Sharon, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about the next steps?
So when we looked at the data, we're happy with what happened, but I got to tell you, when I first looked at the data, I went, because I wanted more.
Yeah,
I did, because I want more. I want families to get the very best we can possibly give them. And so we started really taking a look at what had we done and what do we want to do.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we decided that we needed to really increase was the coaching support, so that you guys know, if you've done wraparound, you can train all you want, but if you don't have that support that's in there to continue to help them grow their skills, it's easy to fall back to where you were before. And so we started in August doing an intensive coaching the coaches as a part of their recertification. Our coaches go through a recertification process basis, and we're in the midst of that right now. And it's fun, it's exciting, and it's really tiring. Really do think it's going to help move the needle this time even more. A part of that has been Jim Rast, who is a part of Rune Vandenberg, and we are working with him, as you can see, on an online training, so that our foundations will now be online, and so they will be done in modules with support from a coach. I think that's going to do a number of things for us. It will give us a lot more consistent training, because even if I'm the one who does all the training for the state, I never do anything the same way twice. And so I think this will really help with that consistency. It also makes it more self-paced, so people can take it at their speed as they need to, and they can go back and relearn. It's also going to create some modules for us so that we can use that for people who are already certified, who maybe need a booster in something, to take another look at things. We are moving to Fidelity EHR as our system, our computer system, our software system, which I think will also help in terms of documentation, and aligning that wraparound with the MERAP process. That's going to be exciting. In fact, we just started training everybody in that system this week. So it's been a really busy week. And then we really want to really continue to look at that analysis, and take a look at what is it we can continue to do better. So we feel like we're doing pretty good, but we want to keep increasing that and making sure we're doing the very best that we can.
And there's a question in the chat, Sharon, that maybe you can take from your practice experience. Through the analysis on the efficacy of motivational interviewing and wraparound, is there consideration of how well a child responds to MI if the child is placed with a resource family rather than a family of origin? So
yeah, that would be that's a cool question to think about. We haven't looked at data on that yet, but I really appreciate the person who put that question in there, because I think that's something we need to take a look at. Through the Fidelity system, I think we're going to have a way to do that.
Yeah, so one part with the Fidelity EHR system, for those who are not familiar with it, it is built for wraparound. So some of the data elements that would be a little hard for us to sort of like go in backwards will be there in the Fidelity EHR. They're things that, you know, we can easily put in and get out. So we are looking forward to, for example, children who are in resource care or foster care per se, or coming from a group home, or, you know, that we'll be able to put those data elements in, and then who are the resource parents, who are the parents of origin, who are the grandparents, and having all their names and contacts, and they would have access to their records that are in there as appropriate. So we're really looking forward to having all that there.
I think
next year.
Practice basis, what I've seen is that kids who are in out-of-home care, particularly of those who are in foster care, seem to respond better in general to wraparound, just because they're feeling safe and secure, is what we've found in our state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just putting some resources in the chat for folks who are, you know, just wanting to have a little bit more information on what is wraparound, what is motivational interviewing. And for MERAP, the information for MERAP can be found on the Rune Vandenberg site that's in the chat as well. And I think that manual is essentially what has come out of the MERAP work. And we know we're not the only ones doing it. Our connection with Jim Rast on this has really helped us to be one of the first. Oh, there you go. There's the manual. Has helped us to be one of the first implementations. And so we hope to be furthering the analysis with him so that we can actually get a little deeper. As I mentioned before, we did not have a university partner for any of this. So we're hoping to be able to go deeper with him and university partnerships.
And just to cut in, we do have 10 minutes left. So thank you.
And we're almost, this is pretty much our last slide on the lessons that we've learned. So Sharon, I think the first line is yours and the last ones are mine. So go for it.
So it has immense possibilities. I'm excited as I see it and watch it. What we found within our state is that people are very, they've really embraced reflections. They've really embraced open-ended questions, but it's the change skills that seem to be harder for them to pick up. And it's a piece that we're really having to take another look at and make sure that we train it well and really reinforce it and help them to learn that. As a trauma-informed care, that approach, that's so important for the families that we work with. We find we use the ACE survey. The kids in Wyoming that we are serving have high scores in terms of their ACE survey. And so making sure that we are always approaching things from a trauma-informed care place is really important. Our families have talked to us about the fact that focusing on needs makes them feel like there's something wrong with them. It makes them feel like it's a real deficit-based thing. They really like the change that we've made, where we're really focusing on change. What change would you like to make? That it's empowering, and it really denotes that hope that they're looking for and possibly really needing in their lives. We want them to have these skills for the rest of their life. I see them as the people who will continue to pass this along. And so we are going to continue to do the best we can to help them learn the skills that they want that will help them with their lives. Barbara?
So I think just teaching MeWrap demonstrates that improvement. And although we wanted to have even stronger, we realized we didn't have really a lot of movement. Once we saw the fidelity we're starting with, we really didn't have a lot of movement. So it is a good question. Well, what if it wasn't a high fidelity environment? How much change would happen then? So we're hoping that that's where Jim Rast will be able to take some of his work as well. And of course, these are early successes, although now we've got more data in there, and we'll continue to be looking at that impact, taking some of that information on where there is change and where there isn't change, and seeing, do we need to tweak the manual? We're also looking at the MI fidelity measure. So the MIDI 6, MIDI 4, I can't remember what number we're on. Right now, we've used the TOMS, so the treatment observation measure, team observation measure out of the University of Washington. And it doesn't really cover motivational interviewing, coding, and things like that. So instead of adding the motivational interviewing and those observation measures to their plate, just moving over to a motivational interviewing fidelity tool. And that's something that Jim Rast is also working on, and how that improves then the wraparound fidelity. So using the direct observation coaching tool from motivational interviewing, but the program fidelity tool as the WFI-EZ. So we really think that that would strengthen the study, because then we could talk about, the actual fidelity to motivational interviewing. And then just, the last is just more studies that, it'll help us to really get more information in many different places. So, and yes, Allie, the MIDI's great, but it is a better way of understanding. Yes, excellent. If I could trouble people, if you have a phone and you have the Socio app open, there's a thing that's called Shake. Could you touch it and shake your phone? And then I'll tell you what's going to happen. Go ahead, Sharon. You got to do it. You don't have a phone. Okay, so what's going to happen is you'll notice that it starts spinning. We're all going to end up on each other's contact lists. So this way, if you say, oh, gee, I really wish I asked Sharon this question, pop, she's right there in your contact list. So it'll take a little while to load if you've got a slower internet. So hopefully now we'll all be connected. So, are there other questions? Anything? Even, anything that you think we should be studying? We're trying to maximize the use of the tools that we have. Anything else that we should be studying along those way? Okay. Well, we're going to stay for a little while. Diamond, do you want to give the instructions on the CEs and do the, that was our last one. Yeah. And then there are some references at the end if you want to do some more references and get our information later. So.
And feel free to email me. I love talking to people.
So Diamond, I think you have a nugget for us.
I do. I'll go ahead and share that with you guys. Here, let me share my screen. You guys are like, do you see the evidence-based practices screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that was the beginning. And then this was our nugget. And as it says on there, I'm going to go ahead and put, if you're here for CEs, the continuous education credit, there is a survey that you'll need to do. As someone pointed out earlier, I recommend doing that at the very end of the conference. So you can go ahead and copy and paste the link that I'll put in the chat if you guys would like. However, do that. You can also get this on Socio. It's its own individual feature. But do that at the end. Sorry, Barbara, I just sent that to you.
Oh.
But do that at the end of the conference because it's just going to be one link for all the presentations that you've attended if you're here for CEs. And that nugget is going to be for the MindCAN scavenger hunt game. If you've been participating in that, it's been really fun for me to watch. But yeah, I do want to go ahead and say thank you to both Sharon Weber and Barbara Dunn for all their information. Really informational. I did have a few people reach out to me for a copy of this presentation as well. So really great stuff. And then thank you to all for attending. It's been really great. We had about, I think, 68 people total with us. So quite a few numbers. But yeah, does anyone have any questions for Barbara or Sharon? Or we do have a few more minutes left if you'd like. Got a few thank yous in the chat, guys.
Yeah, and you can go ahead and unmute yourself and just ask a question. You don't have to put it in the chat.
Yeah.
I have a question I wouldn't mind asking. I'm afraid you may have answered this already, though I couldn't get into the training for some reason. So I didn't really get to hear the details of your motivational interviewing training that you were providing for them. And I really didn't get to hear the details of that.
So what it is we've taken motivational interviewing and we've totally integrated it into our wraparound training. We started by teaching them separately. We found that didn't work very well because they didn't do both things together. I still not quite sure why, but that just didn't work. So we motivational interviewing, integrated it into wraparound. So when we teach our foundations class, they learn not just how to do a discovery and gather information, but they learn how to really listen for the change language. And we practice those skills of how to do that as they're gathering their information. We've also changed our documents. We've changed all our additional trainings we do so that everything is integrated. And so it's not this one thing separate. It's all put together. Really, really lucky to work with Rin Vandenberg, Jim Rast, to create modules. And so our foundations will, in the future, starting in January, be online so that it's self-paced and they can do it and it's all integrated. And if you ever get in and look at it, there's no critiquing my hair or my clothes because I get to be the facilitator in the videos that you watch. And I've been watching myself going, oh.
I would just really like to know the results if you do start utilizing the Mighty, how the fidelity to the MI is.
Next year. Come back next year. Yeah.
Because we're not done.
No, we are definitely not done. And I think the other part, I don't know if we really mentioned this, Sharon, all the care coordinators, they need to recertify every year.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's
Well,
the other part. It's
everybody recertifies every year. All
Yeah.
the roles do.
Yeah.
And all of them get MI integrated into their training.
Yeah.
That's a separate thing. And that includes our youth support partners.
Mhm.
They're actually probably better at it than the rest of us. They're not set in their ways.
curious if any folks here are using Fidelity EHR with their wraparound programs. Anybody is? Just curious. No. Okay. I guess we'll let you know how that goes too.
I'm excited.
There's no obligation to stay on. You could just, if you have questions, feel free. We just wanted to, in case somebody had a question or wanted to talk. Yeah, I knew if I just gave permission for people, they would go. It's fine. I mean,
Oh,
I
Carrie.
want to be good.
Carrie says she uses Fidelity EHR and has for several years.
Oh, who is that?
Carrie Brown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Carrie, Carrie, where are you from?
We're in Louisiana.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. It's like, I know Carrie Brown. Yeah, there you
Yeah.
are. Yeah.
Yeah, we were one of the pilot sites when they first started.
Yep.
And I'm interested to see your experience of it because we sort of got in and stopped. And so I'm interested to see kind of what maybe some more of the latest ways to integrate it, partly because there's some limitations around implementing the plan of care in the style that Louisiana needed. And so some of the newer developments with Fidelity, we have not kept up with the latest and greatest versions of the output of it. So I'd be interested to see what your experience is once you guys implement it.
Yeah.
What's the difference in the plan of care style that you were looking for?
Well, when we started, it was a real static document that was we needed it customized, and so we paid for that customization. And as a result of that, anytime they implement a new feature or we need to make a change, we have to pay to get it customized because it's so far outside of what their normal plan of care looks like.
Mhm.
And so, so we just kind of got stuck in that, and we've gone back to look to see about changing it at different points, but have never decided to pull the trigger.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Well, that's good to know about their cost model. Thank you.
Yeah.
Feel free to email me anytime.
Yeah, we also looked at doing motivational interviewing several years ago, but just we're within WIC, and so the burden of trying to train two different things, it kind of got to be too much and not enough resources to do that. So I think in theory, well, you guys are showing in practice it's really good. For us, putting it and integrating it together was a little bigger bite than we wanted to chew.
Yeah.
It's been a big bite.
Yeah.
Bite.
Been many huge bites.
That's kind of what I was wondering. I was wondering what the bite was, like what that really entailed. I'm a motivational interviewing trainer, and I work with agencies for months to get true fidelity. So I was just wondering how that played out for you guys and what that really looked like as far as.
I think that's part of why we haven't seen the needle move as much as we wanted, because I think we're still in process. So I started the training with our providers January of 2018. I had to stop and think. 18? Was it 19? Yeah. I can't remember. Anyhow, 19, I think.
19.
Anyhow, and introducing the training is good. Having it in our foundations is good, but you really have to have that continued support and that continued use. And so I think what we're doing now in terms of the intensive coaching with our coaches, changing our scoring model so it incorporates those global scores from MI is going to help to reinforce the MI skills on a regular basis. So
it was 2019, Sharon.
Okay, thank you.
We're only coming up on the end of 2 years. So maybe we're asking too much of ourselves.
Yeah.
But I think Jim Rast has also talked about with the motivational interviewing, it is hard to get that fidelity as well. So hopefully this latest manual will improve that.
I think
Fidelity to motivational interviewing or fidelity to wraparound?
To motivational interviewing.
Okay.
I think it's really going to, so our coaches are now going through the modules that we're creating for our foundations class. And I'm excited because it gives you a brief, here's what we're doing, and then they do some reading, and then they watch the videos, and then they do quizzes. They can't go forward until they've done things. So there's no way to skip. And they have to then do a debrief with their coach before they can go on to the next module. I think all those different learning styles are going to be really helpful to reinforce both wraparound and MI. Mm-hmm. And as a person who's pretending to be the facilitator, I learned that my skills were not as good as I wanted them to be, and I keep learning too. Mm-hmm. So I'm learning, they're learning, we're all doing it together.
Good luck to you. Barbara, you can
Thank
pass
you.
down any tips and tricks to us in Louisiana.
Well, you got Soraya on the phone too, who can help.
Yeah, Soraya, we want all the good, easy stuff. If you could do that, would be great.
Sure.
There is no good, easy
All right,
stuff.
thank you guys. That was great.
Oh, it's good to see you again, Carrie. Bye. Lori, where are you located?
So I'm at the University of Illinois. So
okay.
And we're just bringing RAP in, but I've been a Mint member for 5 years now. So I started training motivational interviewing and then moved into CANS secondary. So, but MI is my love. So I'm constantly like, we need to bring it in.
Yes,
yeah, definitely. So will you also be then working on the wraparound in Illinois or?
So I'm actually the coordinator. I'm the field service coordinator. So I'm the one who is sticking with the CANS and CAT and that type of programming. And then we're gonna be intertwined intensely. So I will be the one who's actually deep diving, I guess, into the SOC stuff.
Yeah, good.
Take a look at the Vroon website. It's just vroonvdb.com.
I pulled it up. You guys put that in the chat, and I just, yeah, interesting stuff. I love it.
It's way awesome. It just makes me excited because and the piece that really makes me excited is I've been doing some observations with some of the coaches who've been doing this more intense training, and I'm seeing the differences. I'm seeing the differences in how they approach things. I'm seeing the differences in how they are having conversations. And I'm seeing differences in how people are responding to them. And that's what it's about.
So I don't know, I mean, if you guys ever need, any extra like activities or anything like that, that's, I actually jumped out of here a few minutes ago and went in because the Mint's having a conference right now too. And I was like, oh. Going back and forth, but I mean, that's constantly what we're talking about is new activities to engage the audience and get them interactive and that kind of thing. So
nice.
Always fun new things coming out.
Good. Well, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you. Exciting stuff. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll look for you next year.
Okay, well, we'll look for you next year so we can help each other out.
Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you.
Hey, oh, hey, Jordan, are you here? I don't know if Jordan's just stuck in Netherworld.
He might be.
Yeah, Okay,
That does happen.
so we're done.